Hello and welcome to the Management Channel. In this session, we're going to look at operational strategies in a global environment. So here we're going to try to gain an understanding of global business management and international management. We're going to try to take a look at achieving a competitive advantage in global operations. We're going to look at the considerations and issues that operations managers face globally. And we're going to examine strategy development and implementation. So why should we study global ops? Why is that so important? Well, look at the trend in the graph in the increase in global trade over the years. And this map is a little bit outdated. Just imagine another 15 years of growth. There are reasons to globalize. One, to improve the supply chain, locating facilities closer to some unique resources, such as a mineral that's really needed. We want to reduce the costs, looking at the labor, tax, tariffs, and so forth. And foreign locations with lower wage rates can lower direct and indirect costs. Improve operations by understanding business in other countries. International operations can improve the response time and customer service thereof. You can improve products by considering other cultural needs. By interacting with foreign customers, suppliers, competition can lead to new opportunities. And how about attract and retain global talent? Offering better employment opportunities, better growth opportunities, and insulation against unemployment. And relocate unneeded personnel to more prosperous locations. A global business is buying and selling of goods and services to people from different countries. A domestic business conducts business only in its own home country, such as the United States. International business is primarily based in one country, but conducts business in multiple countries. And then a multinational business has significant businesses in two or more countries. We can do this by direct foreign investment. A company builds a new business or buys an existing business in a foreign country. You can do this through what's called a joint venture, by creating a new company or an enterprise with another company, and when both businesses agree to produce together, thus sharing ownership. There are various forms of global business depending on your desire and your ability to expand. There's cooperative contracts, an agreement in which a foreign business owner pays a company a fee for the right to conduct that business in that country. Some of the ways are licensing. It's an agreement in which a domestic company receives royalty payments for allowing another company to produce a licensor's product, sell its service, or use its brand name in a specified foreign market. McDonald's, for instance. You'll find that if you go to McDonald's in different countries, you won't find McDonald's burgers so easily in India because the cow is sacred there. But they are licensed to produce other products and have the McDonald's logo. Franchising is when a parent company provides trademark, equipment, materials, training, etc. for a fee and a percentage of their revenues. There's a strategic alliance, an agreement in which companies combine key resources, costs, risks, technology, and people. And some of those ways are, again, joint venture, as mentioned, two or more companies existing together to collaborate to form a third independent company, or a wholly owned affiliate. These foreign offices, facilities, and manufacturing plants that are 100% owned by the parent company. And I'm going to add one more that's not mentioned in most textbooks, and that's contracting. A company that contracts a foreign business to manufacture goods to be sold as their own. A good example was Sears with their Craftsman tools. Sears didn't build them. They contracted another company to do that. Walmart does the same thing and then puts their own brand on it, like Great Value. The components of international plans are, first of all, imports, buying goods or services from another country, or exporting, selling goods or services to another country. A license agreement is a right granted by one company to another to use its brand name, technology, product specifications in the manufacture or sale of goods and services. Direct investing uses the assets of one company to purchase the operating assets of another company. And as mentioned, joint venture is a partnership formed by a company in one country with a company in another country for the purpose of pursuing some mutual desirable business undertaking. General Motors did that with their automobiles. By the way, it does not have to be in separate countries. It could be in the same country. So the fundamentals of international management are the performance of management activities across national borders. It includes reaching organizational objectives by extending management activities to include an emphasis on organizations in foreign countries. The question is not whether we should do it, it's more of how should we do it and how quickly. There are global trade agreements, and there are quite a few of them actually, that help ease trade for the global environment. First of all, there's the World Trade Organization, which deals with global rules of trade between nations. It ensures that trade flows as smoothly, as predictably, as freely as possible, and with regional trading zones, areas that were created in which tariff and non-tariff barriers between companies are either reduced or eliminated. The International Market Agreement is an arrangement among a cluster of countries that facilitates a high level of trade among those countries. The European Union is an international market agreement established in 1994 to facilitate trade among their member nations. We have the North American Free Trade Agreement, or we may not have anymore. The International Market Agreement aimed at facilitating trade among the member nations of North America, which were Canada, United States, and Mexico. The Asian Pacific Economic Cooperation was established in 1989 to further economic growth and prosperity of the Asia-Pacific community. General Agreement on Trade and Tariff was GATT, Worldwide Trade Agreement, set out to reduce and eliminate tariffs, limit government subsidies, and establish protection for intellectual property. North America Free Trade Agreement was one of them. Asia-Pacific Economic Cooperation was one. And the Association of Southeast Asian Nations, or ASEAN. There can be a myriad of trade barriers. Government-imposed regulations that will increase cost and restrict the number of imported goods. And there could be some form of what's called protectionism, a government's use of trade barriers to shield domestic companies and their workers from being underdriven by foreign competition, or to prevent foreign businesses from pricing lower there to drive out competition. So maybe these barriers could be used in the form of a tariff, which would be a direct tax on imported goods to make them more expensive. Non-tariff barriers, which would be non-tax methods of increasing the cost of reducing the volume of imported goods. Quotas, limiting the number of volume of imported goods coming in from a certain country. Voluntary export restraint, voluntarily imposing limits on the number or volume of products you export to a country. Government import standard, a standard established to protect the health and the safety of citizens, but in reality is really used to restrict import volumes. Subsidies are government loans, grants, and tax deferments given to domestic companies to protect them from the foreign competition. And then we have customs classification, assigning to imported products that affect the size of the tariff and the imposition of import quotas. So how do you find the best business climate? Attractive global business climates are positions the company for easy access to growing markets. It's effective but cost-efficient place to build an office or manufacturing facility, and it minimizes the political risk to the company. Factors that determine the growth potential of foreign markets would be foreign competitors and purchasing power. Purchasing power would be the cost of raw materials and ability to produce and sell in different countries. Here on this map, you can see what is considered to be the world's best cities for business. I'll let you scan this for a moment. Pause if you need to. Multinational corporation. Workers in multinational organizations are pretty much divided into three basic types. 1. Expatriate, an organization member who lives and works in a country not of their citizenship. Host country national, an organization member who is a citizen of the country in which the facility is located. And third, country national, a member who is a citizen of one country and works in another country for an organization headquartered in still another country. Working in multinational corporations requires more difficult adjustment due to adjusting to a brand new culture and a way of life. Repatriation is a process of bringing individuals who are working abroad back to their home country and reintegrating them back into the organization's home country. The longer one is away, the harder it is to reintegrate. There are some advantages and some disadvantages, things that they were accustomed to and some things that they had to do without. Organizing a multinational corporation, the structure is the sum of all established relationships among resources within the organization. They must have competent and knowledgeable managers. They must have an attitude proper for multinational organization. There are 4 different types of attitudes: ethnocentric, polycentric, geocentric, and regiocentric. Ethnocentric is the belief that the multinational corporation should regard home country management practices as superior to their foreign country practices and then let that guide their strategic decisions. Polycentric is a belief that because foreign managers are closer to foreign units, they probably understand them better, and thus those practices are more insightful and proper. Makes sense, right? Regiocentric is a philosophy of management whereby the firm tries to blend its own interests with those of its subsidiaries on a regional basis. Geocentric is a belief that overall quality of management recommendations rather than location of managers should determine the acceptability of management practices used to guide the organization. So there are many different approaches. Some of the cultural and ethical challenges that we face, because we have to realize cultures are very different from country to country. Attitudes are different towards things like punctuality, lunch breaks, environment, intellectual property, theft, bribery, and child labor. So let's look at how do you advertise in these countries. In France, avoid reasoning or logic. Advertising is predominantly emotional, dramatic, and symbolic. The spots are viewed as cultural events, art for the sake of money, and reviewed as if they were literature or films. The British value laughter above everything else. Typical broad, self-deprecating British commercial amuses by mocking both the advertiser and the consumer. Germans want factual and rational advertising. A typical German spot features a standard family of 2 parents, 2 children, and a grandmother. So, how do you add value to marketing? You tailor the advertising message to the particular culture. Stay abreast of the local market conditions. Don't assume all markets are basically the same. They are not. Know the strengths and weaknesses of your subsidiaries. Provide them with assistance in addressing local demands. And give the subsidiary more autonomy. Let it respond to changes in their local demand. There are similarities across cultures, but understand it's not possible to do business the same way in every global location. Procedures and strategies that work well at home may not be adopted very easily overseas without some kind of modification. Some similarities have been found between Russia and U.S., for example. Traditional management, communication, human resources, networking opportunities, and observation benefit modules. Differences across cultures. There are far more differences than similarities found in cross-cultural research. Wages, compensation, pay, equity, maternity leave all differ from one culture to another. The importance of criteria used in an evaluation of employees differs from one culture to another. To successfully influence employees, managers should acquire working knowledge of the languages used in foreign countries where the operations are happening, understand the attitudes of people in countries where foreign operations are, understand the needs that motivate people in the foreign countries where the operations are, and according to Hofstede, natural cultural values vary on 5 basic dimensions. Power distance, the degree to which a society promotes an unequal distribution of power. Some countries prefer autocratic rather than democratic leadership. Uncertainty avoidance, the extent to which a society feels threatened by uncertain or unpredictable situations. Some cultures tolerate risk better than others. Individualism and collectivism, the degree to which people in a society work primarily as individuals or within a group. Individuals concentrate on meeting their own needs, like the USA. And collectivism, though, however, Japan and Mexico tend to worry about the good of everyone and not just the individual. Masculinity and femininity. Masculinity produces high worth on competitiveness, assertiveness, success, and wealth. Femininity places high worth on caring for and nurturing others and increasing the quality of life. Short-term and long-term orientation, short-run success versus long-term planning and future goals. Maintaining ethics. There are 3 key components to maintaining ethics in international management. 1. Respecting core human rights. All people deserve an opportunity to achieve economic advancement and an improved standard of living. Everyone has the right to be treated with respect and treated equally. Respecting local tradition. Honor and hold the customs of the foreign countries in high regard. Observe their traditions, their customs, and their holidays. And determining right from wrong by examining content and evaluating specifics of the international situation and determine if particular management activity is ethical. What is wrong in one country may not be in another, so you need to evaluate according to the country you're doing business in. If you're doing business in China, Chinese place values and principles above money and expediency. Business meetings typically start with pleasantries such as tea and general conversation about the guest's trip to the country, their local accommodations, and perhaps their family. The Chinese host will give the appropriate indication for when a meeting should start and when the meeting is over. Once the Chinese decide who and what is best, they tend to stick with that decision. Although they're slow in formulating a plan of action, once they get started, they make fairly good progress. In negotiations, reciprocity is important. If the Chinese give concessions, they expect some in return. Because negotiating can involve a loss of face, it's common to find Chinese carrying out the whole business process through an intermediary. During negotiations, it is important not to show excessive emotion of any kind. Anger or frustration is viewed as both antisocial and unseemly. Negotiations should be viewed with a long-term perspective. Those who will do best are the ones who realize they are investing in a long-term relationship. Doing business in Russia, you need to build personal relationships with partners. However, when there are contract disputes, there's little protection for the aggrieved party because of the time and effort needed to legally enforce the agreement. You want to use a local consultant. Business has changed a lot in the past few years and continues to change, so it pays to have a local Russian consultant working with the company you wish to do business with. Ethical behavior in the United States is not always the same as it in Russia. For example, it is traditional in Russia to give gifts to those with whom wants to transact business. Be patient. In order to be able to get anything done in Russia, it often takes months of waiting. Russians like exclusive arrangements and often negotiate with just one firm at a time. Russians like to do business face to face, so when they receive letters or faxes, they often put them on their desk and do not respond to them. You want to keep your financial information personal. Russians wait until they know their partner well enough to feel comfortable before sharing any financial data. And research the company. In dealing effectively with Russian partners, it is helpful to get information about the company, its management order, and how typically it does business. Stress mutual gain. The Western idea of win-win in negotiation also works well in Russia. Clarify terminology. Double check and make sure the other party clearly understands the proposal, knows what is expected and by when, and is agreeable to that deal. Be careful about compromising or settling things too quickly because this is seen as a sign of weakness there. Russians view contracts as binding only if they continue to be mutually beneficial. So you need to continually show them the benefits associated with sticking to the deal. India, a whole nother world. It is important to be on time for meetings. Personal questions should not be asked unless the other individual is a friend or close associate. Titles are important, so people who are doctors or professors should be addressed accordingly. Public displays of affection are considered to be inappropriate, so make sure you refrain from backslapping, holding hands, or touching others. Beckoning is done with the palm turned down. Pointing often is done with the chin instead of the fingers. When eating or accepting things, use the right hand because the left hand is considered to be unclean. The namaste gesture can be used to greet people. It's also used to convey other messages, including a signal that one has had enough food, and to thank them. Bargaining for goods and service is common. This contrasts with Western traditions where bargaining might be considered rude or abrasive. And now let's go to France. When shaking hands with a French person, use a quick shake with some pressure in the grip. It is extremely important to be on time for meetings and social occasions. Being fashionably late is frowned on. During a meal, it is acceptable to engage in pleasant conversation, but personal conversations on the subject of money are never brought up. Visiting business people should try very hard to be cultured and sophisticated. The French tend to be suspicious of early friendliness in the discussion and dislike first names, taking off jackets, or disclosure of any personal or family details. In negotiations, the French try to find out what all of the other side's aims and demands are at the beginning, but they reveal their own hand late in the negotiations. French do not like being rushed into making a decision, and they rarely make important decisions inside a meeting. The French tend to be very precise and logical in their approach to things, and will often not make concessions in negotiations unless their logic has been defeated. Doing business in Arab countries is also different. It is important to never display feelings of superiority. It makes the other party feel inferior. Let one's actions speak for itself and not brag or put on a show of self-importance. One should not take credit for joint efforts. A great deal of whatever is accomplished is a result of group work, and to indicate that one accomplished something alone is a mistake. Much of what gets done is a result of going through administrative channels in the country. It often is difficult to sidestep a lot of the red tape there, and the efforts to try to do so can be regarded as disrespectful for the legal and governmental institutions. Connections are extremely important in conducting business in Arab countries. Patience is also critical to the success of business transactions. This time consideration should be built into all negotiations. Important decisions usually are made in person, not by correspondence or telephone. This is why a personal presence often is a prerequisite for success in the Arab world. Additionally, while there may be many people who provide input on the final decision, The ultimate power rests with the person at the top, and this individual will rely heavily on their personal impressions, their trust, and their rapport with you. Corruption in countries. Unbelievable. It has changed a lot, and I agree with you, this chart is way outdated. But the least corrupt are Denmark, Sweden, Singapore, Switzerland. The most corrupt are Russia, Vietnam, China, and so on. The United States, unfortunately, is on the low end, but kind of in the middle of this chart. So yeah, we are a little corrupt. When doing business in another country, companies need to consider the national literacy rate, their rate of innovation, their rate of technology change, what is the number of skilled workers they have, is the politics stable, what are the product liability laws, what are the export restrictions, what are the variations in language, what are their work ethic, their tax rates, availability of raw materials. The list goes on. So an international strategy is a strategy in which markets are penetrated using exports and licenses. Multi-domestic strategy is one in which operating decisions are decentralized to each country so as to enhance local responsiveness. Global strategy is a strategy in which operating decisions are centralized and headquarters coordinates the standardization and learning between facilities. Transnational strategy is one that combines the benefits of global scale efficiencies with the benefits of local responsiveness. There is so much to learn about international business. I invite you to do a Google search to learn of the other country business aspects. Thank you for watching and have a great day.